So today I'm going to do a brief demonstration of how you use Amazon Redshift, and I'm going to show you some of its key features. We're going to load a little bit of data, and we're going to test a couple of queries. Amazon Redshift is a columnar database as part of Amazon Web Services, and what makes column databases unique is that it stores the columns together instead of the rows. And because of that, you can do queries like full table scan queries much faster. Summations like a select star might not be as fast, but if you're, say, doing an average across millions of records, it's quite a bit faster. It's used for data warehousing capabilities. It's fully managed by Amazon. It's a simple AWS service like EC2 and S3, so it takes away a lot of the management hassles of dealing with data warehouses and databases, etc. It's extremely fast because of the columnar nature, and it's extremely cheap because you only use what you pay for, and it's oftentimes 1/10 the cost of standard licensed software. So what we're going to do today here is we're going to start a Redshift cluster. I'm going to go through the basics of it. I already have one running, but I will kind of walk through the steps of what you need to do to actually try and start one. We're going to configure Workbench J, which is an open source tool that allows you to work with databases that you can attach to Redshift. And then we're going to perform some basic queries. I've loaded a data set out there that has 3 million records in it, and it's got dates, and it has random numbers between 0 and 1 million. And we're just going to run a couple of queries to see if we can get some averages and some things like that. Before we get started here, Workbench J is open source, and you can download it, and you can look that up on the internet. And like I said, we're going to do the Amazon AWS cluster. And you're going to need the JDBC driver as well. So here are the links for the JDBC drivers or ODBC. It'll work with either. I've configured the JDBC, and I'll show you that real quick too as to how that works in Workbench J. And there's where you can go get the SQL Workbench. That's the link for that. And so, good luck. And what we'll do is we'll get started here with doing a little bit of a demo. So if you've got an Amazon AWS account, all you need to do is go here to, when you log into your account, you go to Services, and there is a service for Redshift, and you can click on the Redshift service. Now we already have a cluster running. You won't get this particular exact screen that I'm showing you kind of the basics of here when you first start it, but you will, whatever the screen that you have, you will have a launch cluster. And when you click on that, really the only things that are that relevant that you need to put in is we've got a cluster identifier here, and I'll just put in test real quick. You don't have to put a database name. It'll give you a default name. You can put in a master username. We'll put in test, and then you need a master password, and the password has to contain at least 8 characters, must contain uppercase, lowercase, one number, that kind of thing. So I'm just going to type in something here real quick. Okay. And then when you do that, and there are some instructions here on information if you have questions. Now we'll click continue. Oh, I got to type a password and get it to match. So hold on just one second. And I move on to continue, and now it says choose number of nodes and type of node below. Number of compute nodes is required for a multi-node cluster. So you can do multi-nodes, but I think that for R and the number of nodes here, I think we're just going to do a single node because that's just the easiest to configure. You come over here once again and you click continue, and this is all demo kind of stuff that I'm just kind of walking you through the parameters here. So cluster parameter group, you can leave that default. Encrypt the database if it's important to you to encrypt, go ahead. Choose a VPC or a non-VPC, and if you want it in a particular availability zone, and the advantage of an availability zone is that Availability zones are physically separate such that if one fails, the other one doesn't. So for redundancy, you might have it in multiple different availability zones, or you might want it with your existing resources. And then there's a security group. And so you do all of that, and then you go into the properties, and here's the properties, and it tells you the information that we filled out here, availability zones, and then you come down here to the bottom, and it gives you some more information about your database configuration over here, and your security and access over here, and then all you need to do is launch, and it will tell you you will start accruing charges as soon as your cluster is active, 85 cents an hour. So that's all there is to it. Now, I'm not going to launch one because I already have one running, but you do need to come over here to security groups, and in the security group, you do need to authorize your machine to be able to access it so that when you get Workbench J working, that it will work. So you need to set a security group. There is generally an option when you say site or IP group. It will tell you what your current IP address is and create a rule. You just copy this rule to this box, click authorize, and then your machine should have access to your Redshift cluster. And so now I'm going to go back and look at the clusters and say that for this particular class, I already have one running and it's available and it's healthy. So really, just a couple of settings and you're all good to go and everything's all set up and ready for you. So that's really all there is to actually setting up a Redshift cluster. Now, what I'm going to do next is I'm going to show you the SQL Workbench. And I've got this, here, let me expand it out just a little bit here. We don't need much room in terms of the results because our statements are going to be pretty basic. But when you first start it, you're going to get this connect window here, and it's a little tough to see, but I'll try to walk you through the details here pretty quick. So you come up here and you're going to click to create a new profile group, and this is the name of your profile group here. You're going to click the Postgres driver, and you're going to get a URL that was on your Redshift properties page. And let me go back and show you that real quick. You come over here and click on your cluster, and you come down here, you will have the JDBC URL right there. And you're going to grab that JDBC URL. Come on, minimize. And you're going to copy that into the URL field. You're going to put your username and password. You need to select auto commit here, and everything else you leave the same, and you click OK to connect, and it opens and connects to the database. And that's all there is to it. And so the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to say select the average random number from testing. So I created the testing table, and the testing table has a date time column, and it has a random num column. And the random number column is from 0 to 1,000,000. And the date time is a random date. I used epic time, so from, I think that's 1970, January 1. And I did it through today, May 8th, 2013. And so now all you have to do is I'm going to pick a particular query here. So I'm going to say between January 1, 1984 and January 31st, 1984 from 00 to 2359. So I'm going to pick the average for that month out of 3 million entries. I hit it, and it tells me the average is 494,048, and that took 0.24 seconds. So if I want to say for all, so for all 3 million records, so now I'm going to calculate the average for 3 million records. Go. Okay, so that took 0.14 seconds, and I got 499,674. So as you can see, with a column database, and let's see if I can just select star to give you an idea of what the data looks like. Select star from stack. Limit. See if I can do this real quick. There. So this shows you what the data actually looks like here down at the bottom. And it's showing you several records from the same date, the first date, because it's ordered that way. But as you can see, that's the data, and that was the queries I did, and that's how fast you did them. Now, if you're, the only other thing I can show you here real quick is I can show you the copy command that you need in order to be able to load the data. Now, I had this data in S3 buckets. So all I did was, as I said, copy testing from S3 final output 1. That's a million of those values that I just showed you. And then you use your AWS access key and your secret key, which I have marked mine out. And you delimit that and you put it into the table, and the table contains 2 columns, date ID, random number, and then you can do your queries, and they happen in fractions of a second. And so that's the basics of how you start a cluster. That is how you copy the data into the cluster, and how you do some basic queries on the cluster. So I hope this helps you understand a little bit better just how easy it is to attach to Redshift, to use Redshift to run queries, and over millions of records, just how fast it is. So this was a basic overview and introduction to Amazon Redshift. I hope it was helpful.